Assalamu alaikum and welcome. We're going to be discussing comprehensive education, and here with me is Dr. Bilal Phillips from Canada. We have Dr. Jaafar Idris from Sudan, and Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed from the USA. I'm Omar Dexter, your host from the UK. Dr. Bilal Phillips, would you like to start, please?
The topic of comprehensive education, from my perspective, is that from a Muslim or Islamic historical context, education was always comprehensive. Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, had said seeking knowledge is obligatory on every Muslim. And it was understood from that time that it was all knowledge, though religious knowledge was primary. I mean, this is the beginning point, but that it wasn't limited to religious knowledge, but would include all areas of knowledge. So from that early beginning, we can see that sciences and the various other fields flourished in places like Spain and Baghdad, etc. And nobody questioned the fact that there are no limits to knowledge. It was comprehensive. So you found a scholar may be a scholar of Islamic law, and at the same time, he was a specialist in optics, or he was also an astronomer, and so you found that blend in the Muslim world historically. And I think that it's really only since the introduction of secularist thought, where people wanted to separate religion from the rest, right, that we now found schools being separated out. You don't teach religion in schools anymore. So you have schools which focus on secular education, then you have schools which focus on religious education. And actually, even in Christian tradition, the monks in Europe, I mean, they were the people who had the knowledge, the monasteries and that, they were the religious representatives and they had the knowledge. Yes, yes. And they came and they learned amongst the Muslims, brought that knowledge back, etc. So it's really in the last 200 years, really, or maybe less, that the education became split, so we no longer had comprehensive education anymore.
And I think also that as a result of this, something else happened. For example, at the time of the Prophet and early ages, no one thought of religious people as being in a class of people who don't know much about the world, and who cannot be consulted when it comes to economics or politics. This was not the case at the time of the Prophet and the companions of the Prophet. They knew whatever other Arabs knew at that time. They knew the geography of their country very well. They were very much versed in their language. They knew about the different tribes, who is the son of who, what this tribe is related to the other tribe. And as you said, this made them later on also acquire other kinds of knowledge without feeling that they are doing something that is foreign to their religion. If many of the learned people, and this I think is what we now should do, they were not, for example, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he was not a specialist in say, medicine or astronomy or so. Al-Ghazali was not, but they knew what the people at that time knew about astronomy. I sometimes say that Al-Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah's knowledge of astronomy is more than the knowledge of some sheikhs at the present time, in spite of the increase in the knowledge of this. Ibn Taymiyyah said that he argued with the philosophers at the age 14. Al-Ghazali wrote his book, Tahafut al-Falasifa, something like Destruction of the Philosophers and so on. He said that he spent 2 years studying philosophy, and 2 years by a person like Al-Ghazali is equal to 10 years or 20 years by an ordinary person. And when he wrote that book and it was published, it was said that that was the death of philosophy. So I agree with you that this was the case in early times.
If I can add something to this, I would say that madrasas, this term now, that spreads in different countries, is a clear representation of the separation between secular studies and Islamic studies. This would lead the people to think people who work as leaders in these schools or the community would need to work on the madrasas, the form of the madrasas that's going on right now, to change this form to its original Islamic origin. In other words, that we need to add some of these subjects that are necessary for fitting in and living into this world, in addition to our courses in Quran and Seerah and Hadith and Aqidah. We need to add some of the courses related to science and math and these issues, because this would prepare a graduate of these schools to fit very well in the world nowadays. So I think the people who are responsible for madrasas, they need to look into the definition of comprehensive education as understood by the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, and we need to go back to basics and follow this model. I think this would be of great benefit to the Muslims who lead these schools.
But I think this development really was a result of the period of colonization. You know, when European colonization affected the Muslim world, and education now meant conversion to Christianity, because they set up the schools. If Muslim kids would go to those schools, then they could see what was happening. They would be converted. So parents kept their children back from the schools and developed these alternative schools. But of course, and that's what has sort of left a legacy in many of the countries where you have, Muslims and non-Muslims, that the non-Muslims would have advanced in that colonial system, and they ended up taking the reins of power in the country after the colonials left, and the Muslims tended to be backwards, and the backwardness was always, a result, as it was seen, of madrasa education. So even the modern Muslims who felt, we need to be a part of this development and, be more modern, etc., they looked down at the madrasas as a result of that, not really realizing that their parents, in choosing that, were trying to save their faith. This was the intent.
And I can tell you from experience, I went to school when the Sudan was under British rule. And well, I still thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I went to these British schools because I could combine what is called secular education with what is called religious education, because at school, the Islamic period, they call it period, was only one in a week, and there were 7 periods in the day, and this was the last period when you are tired and you are sleepy and so on. And you didn't have to pass in this Islamic education to have your certificate. So I can tell you, yes, from experience. And at the same time, just as you said, you had in the Sudan, these were called ma'had, not madrasa. Ma'had. And there, the students at that early time, they were not taught anything except in Islam, and not even Islam of the Quran and the Sunnah, just some fiqh and Arabic and so on. And when they graduated, there was no
future.
No future for them. Yeah.
I think on another level, we need to address the issue of those people who studied at, if we can call them, secular school. They became engineers, they became doctors, and now when they graduate from the universities, they need some sort of Islamic education to have a balance in their character, in Islamic character. How can we do this job, achieve this job, in order to enrich them with the knowledge that's necessary for them to be good Muslims?
Have any experience in Britain?
Yeah, I think in reality, maybe, well, before I answer that one, I think part of the baseline to it is say, well, had the children been brought up in a proper Islamic education from a young age, like a comprehensive education from a young age, then you'd hope that have that baseline. They would learn how to pray. They would learn the fundamentals of their religion, their aqidah, before they come on to the aspects of like university education. So it's kind of like topping up the foundation.
But this is now, alhamdulillah, in some at least Arab schools that I know. And before you come to the university, you will have good knowledge of these basics of the Aqidah, fiqh. So this is still the case in some parts of the Arab world.
But still, we have 1 or 2 million Muslims who graduate every year from the universities who don't have background in Islam, and we need to address those ones. How can we teach them some Islamic courses, or what are the ways that would help them, inshallah, to get the balance in their Islamic character?
Explore the options. Match the qualities. Assure the success.
What happens at schools, or more specifically, what happens inside the classroom? Good qualities of classrooms: interactive, challenging, collaborative, distributive focus, student-centered. Let's together examine the quality of education that is provided to our children. To judge this quality precisely, join me on Peace TV.
Join Dr. Mamdouh Mohamed in Teaching at School every Sunday, Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Saudi Arabia and 7 p.m. UAE on Peace TV.
A friendly message by Dr. Zakir. The fastest growing religion in the world.
A survey was published in the Reader's Digest Almanac Yearbook 1993, which was also reprinted in the Plain Truth magazine, February 1984. This survey gave the statistics of the increase in the percentage of the major world religions in a span of 50 years, from 1934 to 1984. The religion which increased the maximum at number 1 position was Islam, which increased by 235%. Christianity only 47%. Which war took place between 1934 and 1984, which forced millions of people to accept Islam? Which sword was used? According to the latest statistics, today, the fastest growing religion in America is Islam. The fastest growing religion in Europe is Islam. The fastest growing religion in the world is Islam. Which sword is forcing tens of thousands of Americans to accept Islam? Tens of thousands of Europeans to accept Islam? Millions of people in the world to accept Islam. Which sword? It is the sword of Islam, the sword of peace, the sword of truth and wisdom, which gives the solution to the problems of humanity.
Peace TV, the solution for humanity.
Even if you get it right now, you might find if we get that process of education started from an early age, now you might find there's a whole generation of people caught in the system before it reaches through.
So the question that Dr. Mamdouh is raising here is, what do we do now? I mean,
Yes, for those ones.
we know what we would like to see, you know, that comprehensive education being introduced. But what do we do now for people who are already in the system or who have already graduated from the system? Like yourself, you accepted Islam, you know, you had already completed various elements of your education, and now you needed to develop the Islamic side. I could say from my experience, because I also came from a science background. I was a biochemistry major in university, you know, before converting to Islam and then going to study in Medina. That in my studies there, for example, when we were taking the inheritance laws, the mode by which they were being calculated was according to mathematics, you know, of 800, 900 years ago. I could see by making some equations, you know, some that you could I was able to figure out the problem. The teacher mentioned the problem. I figured it out on paper. And they would spend the whole period working on how to do this problem, you know. I just said, if you make this one X and you put that one as Y and you do this and that, you get, you know.
Algebra.
But, yeah, some algebra in there. And Muslims were the ones who invented algebra also, right? But in spite of that, the
So ultimately someone did this.
Yeah, eventually,
yes,
yes, finally that resolved a lot of that. But that is because of the lack of many of the students and the teachers themselves. They came from the quote-unquote madrasa education. So they didn't have sufficient exposure to mathematics to learn the latest developments in mathematics and then apply it to those areas of Islamic learning, you know, where it was applicable.
What happens
But now this is an example of someone. Let us now enumerate how one can acquire both kinds of knowledge. Now this is an example, yours and his. So, no, yours. You studied biochemistry. Then you went to a proper Islamic institution. So that is the ideal, I think. But not everyone can do that. Most people can. And by the way, we have to say also, how can someone who graduated in Islamic studies acquire what is called the secular education? Here also you will find the ideal. Some people graduated, say, from Medina or any Islamic university and went to America or so and studied, say, economics, and so my son did for this. So again, this is an ideal. Not everyone can do that. So what is the next best? What is the next best thing in combining this with that or that with this?
Okay, one idea would be after a person graduates from the university, if he graduated from an Islamic university and he has an option to study in America or in England, he would be lucky. But how about if he studied in the Middle East and still the educational system at universities does not allow everybody to continue his education? I think continuous education after graduation by getting some courses here and there from different universities. If I'm a graduate of an Islamic university in Egypt and there is an opportunity or a window of opportunities that I can select to study at Cairo University, for example, a course in physics or a course in math, that would be wonderful. That's why I think...
But that is not available now.
It is available in the States and Europe and Australia. And I wish that the education in the Middle East would change towards achieving this goal and in order to have this balanced graduate from Islamic background to add to him or to her some courses, secular courses that he would need or she would need in her lifetime.
No, let us just assume that things are
there
as they are now.
Okay.
How can I, who studied in this field or that field, how can I acquire the knowledge of the other, the secular or the Islamic?
I would say distance education and e-learning is an option that's available to many people nowadays. You don't need to travel to that country or this country, or rather you can sit at home and you join one of these universities and you get some courses in that. I think distance education in the coming few decades will play a great role in educating Muslims from both directions, who got Islamic education from one side and want to complete it by secular courses, if we can say that, and vice versa, those who have secular background and they want to complete it by, yes. And there are some nowadays, there are some Islamic educational, distance education schools now. They are in the States, they are in London, and there are many countries. Alhamdulillah, it's still in the beginning, but I think it will fill the gap that is needed by the two parts.
I think also for those who come from what we may call secular educational backgrounds, I mean, by attending conferences, they will get that regularly. They get that exposure to different areas of learning. We now have a lot of courses being offered in masjids, in certain. Of course, it will vary from country to country, but these courses are being made more and more available. A lot more books have been written. Especially that, for example, in English, things have been translated, books are being written. So a person, I mean, no one really has an excuse to not avail themselves of some of this information, you know. So I think that this is part of the future trend, that more and more people, you know, should be encouraged to step out of their field and to be exposed to those other areas of knowledge.
One other way, of course, is the role of imams. If each imam, for example, would teach a course in tafsir for 1 or 2 months, the people in his area would benefit from this course. And he finishes a course in tafsir. After 1 or 2 months, he would cover another subject of aqidah or something like this. And this way, during 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, you would find the audience, the regular audience who attend regularly, I think they will benefit a lot, and this would help a lot. So imams should stick to their main role, not just by leading people in the prayers, but the main mission would be educating others, yes, the minimum that's required by every Muslim to have a balanced character.
I think we forgot also one important, and that is the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Now there are many sites where one can study how to recite the Quran. Recently, I saw something, perhaps you knew it before, but I was amazed to find that you can study 10 qira'at in one of these sites. And the advantage of the sites and of the recording is that you can listen to it as many times you want. If you study under Sheikh, he will listen just once or twice. Next time you come, and he rebukes you for But now you can study this at your own pace. And the same with non-Islamic. I don't like to call them non-Islamic or secular, because all these are Islamic in the sense that Islam approves of them and that the Muslims need them. You can't say mathematics is a secular subject, that physics is a secular subject, because we have to study physics as Muslims. So there are ways now, many means of acquiring this kind of knowledge through the internet or videos, DVDs, and books on tape. And then there are now channels. I know that the BBC, for example, when I was in Britain, they used to have, what is the radio or the television? I am not sure. Radio, how to learn, not only English, but for the British to learn Russian, German, French, something. Yes, this used to be the case. So there are sites now like this. In some countries, I think now in Egypt, there are educational channels. The whole channel will be just for education, helping viewers to study mathematics or sciences. Don't need any experiments, that you can just listen to and understand.
Yeah, you have actually in the West, there's channels like the Discovery Channel, you know, National Geographic, you know, where people are being exposed to a variety of different fields, scientific fields, through a sort of a user-friendly approach, you know, as opposed to a professor there giving you a lesson. You know, you see it in practice, what this looks like and so on. So I think these are going a long way towards that too.
At the same time, I expect from TV channels like Peace TV to have some educational material. I mean, regular studies or regular teaching of a course. And they would test it because it goes to different people all over the world. I think this is a challenge for Peace TV and other channels to use their facilities in order to teach the Muslims everywhere in the world. Yeah, I think this would be something good in order to compensate it. English-speaking Muslims, which is, yes, they are not a small number.
Don't you think that people really need to establish the fact that they need to learn from, you know, throughout their lives? Because you mentioned about the Imam there giving people lessons over various different aspects of Islam. But I think there's a matter of educating the people to realize that they need to be educated. How do you think we,
We
how do you
have
think we
to,
managed to
we
do
have
that?
to motivate them.
Exactly, yeah, to get them to attend the courses so they can be educated. It seems to be a little breakdown in that when that we have, alhamdulillah, so many people trying to make such striving to provide this education, yet you'll find one of the breakdowns is that people aren't forthcoming in having that full attendance.
But I think this is a result of the role of the mosque being lost. You know, the masjid, which was a central place where the Prophet ﷺ taught from, you know, outside it in the Sufa, some of the companions would stay there and teach others who came. So it was an area of learning, you know, whereas today the mosque is just for ritual prayer. You go and you pray and you go. The imam leads the prayer, that's his job, he's paid for that job, and he goes. So that sense of the mosque being the heart of the community, where people come and be educated there, you know, and hold courses in there, I think that was somewhat lost. But I think in more recent times, some of the mosques have become, you know, Islamic centers.